6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank both Chief Rempel and Chief Blake for being with us today. Your testimony and knowledge and experience is very helpful as we pursue some answers to this question around policing as an essential service. The mandate letters for the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness and the Minister of Indigenous Services both refer to co-developing a legislative framework to recognize First Nations policing as essential service. In our last panel, I think, I'm not sure if you both were observing the first hour panel, but we had officials from 4 different federal departments on the panel. And if I recall, I believe it was Ms. Blaney that asked the question about defining essential services. And I'm not sure we actually got an answer to that question from the department officials. So we have this mandate that talks about policing as an essential service. And I'm not sure anybody's telling us or defining for us what that is in the kind of jurisdictional quagmire we seem to find in the federal department. So I'm going to start with Chief Blake and then Chief Rempel, if you'd be prepared to answer the same question. Would you, in your terms, would you just take a moment and define for me what defining police services in your experience at the level of work that you both do, what defining a police service as an essential service would mean as a difference in the communities that you serve?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. And again, I'm very much wanting to understand what essential services means in the definition from Public Safety Canada and the federal government, because that hasn't been clearly defined in any of the meetings that I've attended. I think what's key and critical is to ensure that, again, we're not under a grants and contributions program, that funding cannot be sustained or secured. We need to recognize and realize that we are not asking for anything more in our funding, but we certainly don't want anything less. Our communities deserve it. And we want to ensure that our service officers and staff are treated in the same manner that other police services often take for granted. So the term essential services, I know, is something that needs to be spoken to and addressed, but I do hope it relates to sustainable long-term funding that can be secured and assured to our communities, and that there is the recognition that policing isn't just a responsive model. It needs to address the root causes of crime through crime prevention, through preventative programming, as well as to provide us opportunities to grow our police service, have those specialized units that can address the problems within our communities that we only have support through outside agencies, RCMP in provincial policing jurisdictions, the OPP, Quebec Police Service. So that's just some of my comments, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Chief Rempel, if you want to add your comment to that question, and then I will have one more for you, hopefully, if the chair gives me time.
Certainly. And thank you to Chief Blake for those comments. I echo those. As well, I would just add recognition of authority from the RCMP as well as the courts, the provincial courts. Our people expect the same services as the general population, and we are not getting that response from the RCMP or from the courts. Funding as well, if First Nations enforcement is an option to create our own First Nations authority, I think that would be wonderful and maybe alleviate some of the issues that we are having. But I would really like to hear the federal and provincial definition of essential services as well. Thank you.
I appreciate that from both of you. I'm going to follow up again with just another question down that same line. But so we talk about this, or the federal government talks about this co-development process. I'm just curious if in your roles, Chief Blake, in your role with the association, and Chief Rempel in your role as the chief of First Nation, if you know of people within your organizations or colleagues or people kind of equal peers that have been involved at all or been asked to be involved in the co-development of this process.
Well, thank you. I can advise you that the First Nation Chiefs of Police did have a teleconference with Public Safety Minister Blair last week, and we discussed initially how that might look and what's required. Previous to that, I know the AFN were involved in that framework discussions, and I do think what I really hope happens is the SMEs, the subject matter experts in First Nation policing, are at the table to discuss the challenges, the successes, the framework that's so vitally important, because without those consultations, I don't think it will be the success that everyone's hoping it can be.
Thank you. And Chief Rempel, my question, I want to be a little bit more specific with you. I'm curious if you're aware of any chiefs at the local level that have been asked to be involved with this process.
No, I am not currently aware of any. I would certainly like to participate in that and have that opportunity. I do think it's important, to note that the AFN, while they provide a great service to First Nations, does not accurately, in my opinion, represent every First Nation. And so reliance on engaging with these larger groups doesn't necessarily mean that they're representing my nation. And so nation to nation discussions are also critically important, in my opinion.
And I suspect in your conversation with your peers that I might hear that same answer from many of them. Would that be fair in your opinion?
For sure, yes.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Chair, I'm pretty close there. I'll cede the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Van Koeverden,